There is a sound you have been hearing for years, and you have never had a word for it. So let me give you one now. It is the sound of something turning. Low, constant, underneath everything else in your life. A rotation you did not start and cannot stop. And every time you think it has finally slowed down enough to let you stand still, it picks back up. And somewhere in the middle of that motion, two hands come down and press. Bad luck, a curse, a pattern you cannot break. The universe deciding, for reasons it will never share with you, that you are the one it keeps coming back to press again. I am going to call it what it actually is. You are on a wheel, and you are being centered. Let me tell you what centering actually looks like, because you have never been shown this, and once you see it, you will not be able to look at your own life the same way again. A lump of clay does not arrive on the wheel obedient. It arrives lopsided, denser on one side than the other, full of old habits it does not know it has. The world starts turning, slow at first, and the moment it picks up speed, that imperfection announces itself violently. The clay wobbles, it shudders. If you have never watched this happen, you would not believe how much a small piece of earth can shake when it is spinning around a center it has not yet found. A potter does not fix a wobble by slowing the wheel down. He presses, both hands, steady, unhurried, applying a pressure that from the outside looks almost cruel, because the wobble gets worse before it gets better. The clay fights the hands. It always fights the hands. Every uneven place in it resists being told where the center actually is, because the center is not where the clay wants to stand. It is where the clay needs to stand, and those are rarely the same address. And then, almost without warning, it stops. Not because the wheel slowed, not because the pressure eased. It stops because the hands finally found the exact place where the imbalance was hiding, and pressed there precisely until the wobble had nowhere left to live. You have spent years believing the pressure in your life was random, punishing, personal in the worst way, like something out there had simply chosen you to lean on. It was never random, it was diagnostic. Every hard season, every relationship that pressed on the exact bruise you thought nobody could see, every failure that arrived in the one place you were most afraid to fail, that was not cruelty wandering the earth looking for a target. That was pressure applied with precision, finding the place in you that was still off-center, and staying there until it wasn't. You want to know how a potter knows exactly where to press? He does not guess, he feels. His hands are on the clay the entire time, every second of the spin, reading the wobble through his palms before his eyes have even registered it, adjusting pressure in fractions too small to name. There is no part of that spinning lump of earth that goes unfelt. Nothing about you has been unfelt either, whatever the silence has made you believe. Now, before the clay ever reaches the wheel, there is a step nobody tells stories about, because it is the least glamorous part of the entire process, and also the most necessary. Wedging. The potter takes the raw clay and kneads it, hard, again and again, folding it over itself, pressing his whole weight through his palms into it, over and over, long before it ever touches the wheel. It looks like punishment. It looks, to anyone watching who does not understand what is happening, like a man taking his frustration out on a piece of earth that never did anything to him. He is not angry. He is hunting for air. Because trapped inside raw clay there are pockets, small bubbles of air folded in without the clay's knowledge, invisible from the outside, undetectable by looking, and a bubble like that means nothing on the wheel. It means nothing in the shaping. It stays hidden through every stage that looks difficult. It only reveals itself later, in the kiln, under real heat, when the air inside expands, and the whole piece cracks apart from the inside without warning, in a single moment, after everyone thought the hard part was already finished. A potter can tell the difference between clay that has been properly wedged and clay that has not, just by the sound it makes when he slaps it down onto the table before he even begins. Wedged clay lands with a dense, solid thud, the sound of something with nothing hidden inside it. Unwedged clay lands wrong, slightly hollow, a sound only a trained ear catches, but a sound that tells him everything he needs to know about how much folding is still ahead before this lump is ready for anything as demanding as a wheel. You have made that sound before, in rooms full of people who could not hear it. You have looked solid from the outside and known, privately, exactly which places in you were still hollow with something folded in and hidden. A resentment you never resolved, a fear you never named out loud, a lie you told yourself so long ago it stopped feeling like a lie and started feeling like a personality. The hands that have been kneading you were not fooled by the way you looked from the outside. They were listening for the sound underneath. So the potter finds those pockets early. He presses and folds and presses again, not because he enjoys the pressing, but because a hidden pocket of air is the one flaw that cannot be shaped around later. It has to be found now, in the ugly, unglamorous stage nobody photographs, or it will wait, patient, silent, for the one moment when patience and silence will cost you everything. I want you to think about what has been wedged out of you, the people who left early, before you had built anything worth protecting with them. The version of a plan that looked solid on paper and collapsed the moment real pressure touched it. The friendship that seemed loyal until the specific weak loyalty actually mattered and then wasn't. You called all of that loss. Some of it was loss, but some of it, and I want you to sit with this, some of it was a hand finding a pocket of air in you before that pocket ever got the chance to meet a kiln, and folding it out, roughly, without asking your permission, because asking would have meant explaining, and there was no version of the explanation that would not have made you flinch away from the hands. Now the wheel is turning again, and the clay is centered, and this is the part where most men think the difficult work is finished. It has only started, because a centered lump of clay is not a vessel. It is potential with no shape and no purpose, spinning obediently, waiting for the next thing that will feel, from the inside, like an assault. The thumbs come down into the middle, and they press downward and inward, opening a hollow where a moment ago there was only solid, dense, unbroken material. From the clay's position, if it had a position, this would be the single most violent moment in the entire process. Everything it was, whole, complete, unbroken, is being taken directly through the center and turned inside out into empty space. You have felt this. I know you have, because I can hear it in the way you have described the worst year of your life. The one where something whole in you got opened, and there was nothing you could do to stop it, and you have spent every year since then, quietly grieving the solidness you had before that hollow got carved into the middle of you. I am not going to tell you the grief was wrong. I am going to tell you what the hollow is for. A solid lump of clay cannot hold water. It cannot hold wine, or oil, or grain, or anything a life is actually meant to carry. The wholeness you are grieving was never capacity. It was only mass. And mass, however comforting it feels to stand on, cannot hold a single thing beyond itself. The hollow is not what was taken from you. The hollow is the only place inside you large enough to eventually hold something worth carrying. Now the walls have to rise, and this is the part where the potter's hands move the slowest, because this is the part where the entire piece is most likely to fail. Too much speed and the walls collapse inward on themselves. Too little pressure, and they never rise past a shallow bowl, something that looks finished, but was never actually built for depth. The hands have to pull upward with a patience that has nothing to do with how much time is available, and everything to do with how tall the piece is meant to stand. You have wondered, more than once, why your rising has taken so long. Why other men seem to reach their height in a season, and you are still, After years, only a few inches above where you started, I want to tell you plainly, the height you are being built toward determines how slowly the walls are allowed to rise. A shallow dish can be pulled up in seconds. Nothing has ever been built tall in a hurry.
If your walls are still rising slowly, that is not evidence of a flaw in the clay. That is evidence of how much height this particular vessel was designed to hold. There will come a day, not yet, but it is coming, when the piece leaves the wheel and sits, untouched, in a stage the potters call leather hard.
Firm enough to hold its shape, soft enough to still be altered. This is where the trimming happens. A blade, sharp, precise, cutting away the excess that gathered at the base while the walls were rising, the extra thickness that helped it survive the shaping, but would only weigh it down now that the shape is set. You are going to lose things in that season that you needed earlier, and do not need anymore. Habits that kept you upright during the collapse of everything else will start to feel heavy the moment you no longer need them for balance. People who held weight for you while you were still forming will feel, without either of you doing anything wrong, like extra material at the base of something that has already found its shape. Do not mistake the trimming for ingratitude. The very same hands that pulled you upward are the ones that know exactly what needs to come off now that you are standing on your own. There is a particular kind of grief that belongs only to this stage, and almost nobody warns you about it. It is not the grief of losing something bad. You have grieved bad things before, and known, somewhere underneath the pain, that the loss was a mercy. This is different. This is standing at the wheel and watching something genuinely useful get trimmed away. A caution that served you for years. A self-protection that was never wrong, only outgrown. And feeling the specific ache of gratitude and removal arriving in the same motion of the blade. You are allowed to grieve what the trimming takes, even when you know the shape is better without it. The two feelings were never required to cancel each other out. And then, at the very end, after the shaping, after the trimming, after everything that felt like enough hardship to last a lifetime, there is the part that decides whether any of it held. The kiln. Nothing in that entire process. Not the wheel, not the centering, not the hollow, not the rising walls. Nothing decides whether this piece survives. Only the fire decides that. And here is the part that should terrify you and comfort you in the same breath. A piece can look completely finished, right up until the moment it goes into the heat. It can be shaped perfectly. It can be glazed beautifully. It can sit on a shelf looking, to every untrained eye in the room, exactly like the other pieces around it. And then the fire finds the one thing that was never actually resolved. A wall left slightly too thin in one place because the hands got tired that day. A hairline crack from an air pocket that was almost entirely wedged out, but not quite. Something so small it never showed on the wheel, never showed in the trimming, never showed under the glaze. And the heat, which does not negotiate and does not forgive incompleteness, finds it in seconds, and the whole piece comes apart. That is not cruelty either. I know how it sounds. But a piece that cracks in the kiln was never going to survive the actual use it was made for. Better the fire finds it now, in a controlled chamber built for exactly this purpose, than have it fail later, holding something it was never strong enough to hold, at the exact moment failure would cost the most. You are going to go through fire. Possibly you already have. Possibly you are in it right now. And this is the reason the speech found you tonight instead of some other night. And I cannot promise you the fire will find nothing. I can only tell you what the fire is actually for. It is not there to destroy what survived the wheel. It is there to prove it. Because on the other side of that heat, something happens to clay that nothing else can do to it. It stops being clay at all. Before the fire, a piece can be broken down, soaked in water, reworked, returned to the wheel and started over. After the fire, that is no longer true. What comes out of the kiln is permanent, in a way nothing before it ever was. The fire does not just test the piece. It fixes what survives into something that can never again be pressed back down into raw material. That is what you are being built toward. Not a version of you that is merely shaped. A version of you that has been fired, permanently, into something the wheel can no longer reduce back to a lump of earth, no matter how hard the next season presses. Now I want to speak to the anger, because I know it has been sitting underneath everything I have said tonight, and pretending it is not there would make the rest of this a lie. You are angry that none of this came with a warning. You are angry that the hands never once paused mid-press to explain what they were doing, or how long it would take, or which parts of you were going to survive the process. You have wanted, more than almost anything, for the potter to look up from the wheel for 1 second and say something, anything, that would make the pressure make sense while it was happening. He does not do that, and here is the reason, and it is not indifference. A potter cannot explain the centering to the clay while his hands are still on it, because the clay is not the audience for that explanation. The clay is the material. The explanation exists. It exists in his mind the entire time, a complete picture of exactly what this piece is going to become. But that explanation is not owed to something still spinning. It is owed to the finished vessel, standing on a shelf, holding something, being used for exactly what it was built for. That is when the story gets told, not during the pressing, after. So here is what I am asking you to do differently, now that you understand the shape of what is actually happening to you. Stop bracing against the pressure and start locating it. The next time you feel the specific squeeze of a hard season landing exactly where you are weakest, do not simply endure it. Ask what it has found. Every place life keeps pressing is a place still slightly off-center, and the sooner you stop treating the pressure as an enemy and start treating it as information, the faster the wobble resolves. Start mourning every hollow as a loss. Some of what was carved out of you was never meant to stay. A vessel that stayed solid never held anything but its own weight. Stop comparing the speed of your walls to another man's shelf. You did not see his wheel. You only saw his finished shape, and a finished shape tells you nothing about how slowly the hands had to move to build it that tall. And when the fire finds you, and it will, do not mistake the finding for failure. The fire is not looking for a reason to end you. It is looking for the one flaw that would have ended you later, somewhere with far less mercy than a kiln, and it would rather find it now, here, on purpose, in a place built for exactly this. I want you to picture, for one moment, the vessel this is all going to become. Not the wheel, not the wobble, not the hollow or the walls or the trimming or the fire. The finished thing, standing somewhere, holding something a life actually needed carried. Water for someone thirsty, oil for a lamp burning through a dark night, grain that will feed a house through a winter it did not think it would survive. Nobody who drinks from that vessel is ever going to ask about the wheel. They are only ever going to be grateful that something was built strong enough, and hollow enough, and fired hard enough to hold what they needed carried. That is what the hands have been building the entire time you thought they were only pressing. The wheel was never against you. It was the only voice patient enough to keep pressing until it found every place you were still crooked. And it is not done yet. Let it press. The potter never apologizes to the clay for the wheel. He only waits, hands steady, for the shape that is coming.